Hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream. This is Get the Job, Demystifying the Hiring Process in the Games Industry. I am Tim Cullings. I'm the Executive Director of both Global Game Jam and Seattle Indies. Welcome to everybody who is watching on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you're watching from the world. Thanks for joining us tonight. Going to bring on our panelists now who are going to talk to you about how to find a job in the games industry and their journey to where they are now. Have Lizzie, Bernie, and Cami joining us tonight. All legends in their own right, and I'll let them do some introductions. We can start with Lizzie.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Mintus. I'm founder and CEO of Here's Waldo Recruiting. We do recruiting for the video game industry, and we focus on quality over quantity.
I'm Cami Smith. I'm a senior recruiter for ggLocators, and we focus, of course, on quality, but we only work with game studios, I think like Lizzie's team does.
I'm Bernie. I totally focus on quantity, not quality. That's not true. I am a producer, worked on things, I was at Oculus, one of the original pre-acquisition Oculus people. I shipped a bunch of short playable experiences and games on the Quest and Rift and Touch. I've worked on other games. The ones you've probably heard of are EverQuest and Rock Band, and Plants vs. Zombies 2 and Destiny. So I've been around. I've been in the game industry for some time.
Excellent. Glad to have you all here. Thanks for sharing your time with us. Really appreciate it. We're having a great conversation before this even started, so I'm hoping the rest of the next hour will be an excellent conversation as well. So we can get right into the questions. So I want to start a little off topic and ask, like, what did your parents want you to be when you grew up, or what did you want to be when you were a kid growing up? I'm just interested to hear a little bit about, where you were at that point in your life.
Well, it's easy for me. My parents are Asian, so as doctor or lawyer, right? Like, the only two options. I wanted to be an astronaut, actually. Like, I grew up sort of in the era of the Apollo missions, and I was like, there's nothing cooler than to be an astronaut.
You're pretty cool anyway, Bernie.
Yeah, not like an astronaut, though.
Virtual space.
Yeah. So my father died when I was young, and my mom's goal was to make sure all her daughters and her son were able to support themselves no matter what. So college, of course, was on my horizon. My mom was an artist, and I saw how she struggled with sort of the business side of her world. She was an amazing artist. So I ended up getting my master's degree work in business administration for the arts. Helping creatives has been my mission, my passion. And then later on, my mom remarried someone who was in the HR for the auto industry. So I learned a lot about the interview process and hiring skills that they needed. That he just taught this all to me. So between that and working with creatives, I'm in a real sweet spot right now.
I love that. You're just where you need to be. We were just talking about that. I have always been a strong-spirited person, which means I was a difficult child and never listened. So I always knew that I wanted to work. I wanted to do my own thing and make my own rules, which I'm kind of in the perfect place right now. But I love to talk to people and I love to help people. So I thought I might want to be a teacher. It didn't end up it wasn't the right thing. I thought maybe I would be a doctor, and then I took chemistry. And I found recruiting, and it's talking to people, and now it's talking to people and doing my own thing. So it's perfect.
Nice. Well, different ideas of where you might end up, but I think you'll ended up in the places where you need to be. As you said, I'm just wondering when you decided to follow that path that led you where you are now. What was it maybe that made you to make that decision?
And it's kind of funny. I worked at Nordstrom, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't do the kind of the traditional college route. I did some college and high school, and just wanted to start working. And it was a great customer service job where you learn a lot about talking to different people and how to be humble and how to provide the Nordstrom experience, right? How do you go out of your way to make people happy? And I was at a bar with my friends, and I wanted to do something else, but I was kind of stuck, right? And I didn't know how to get a job. We'll talk about that more. But I met a woman who told me about being a recruiter, and you just talk to people and you help them, and just told me about the culture. And I thought it sounded pretty cool. So kind of by accident, which I think do a lot of recruiters.
Right. So I ended up working at two colleges, Full Sail University. Both these schools were very focused on game development and the entertainment track. And my job was in the career office, building the relationships so we could help the grads get their first jobs in the industry. And so now I did that for a very long time, over a decade. And now those young people I helped get their first jobs are now, head of global marketing at Snap, or starting their own, studio. So it's been a real rewarding thing to watch them grow and continue to grow. So here I am recruiting and actually working with a lot of them.
I think I was pretty strangely lucky to kind of be there at the beginning of personal computing, because when I got my first computer, like there was no software you'd go buy. I mean, not really. You kind of wrote it yourself, right? Either you played it or you programmed it. You wrote it yourself, or you copied it, or you typed it out of a magazine. And it was like, it was sort of the era of Carmack and Romero. Like we all kind of grew up at the same time. Like if you're going to use a computer, you're going to program it. So I had to figure a lot of that stuff out myself. And I think that kind of interest and resilience, when there's not a lot of resources, you kind of figure it out. I will say though, right, had no interest in being a computer science person. The truth is, like, I was more interested in learning how to talk to girls than program. So I went to I got a liberal arts degree, which turns out, I think, to be also a really good thing, because you broaden your horizon. Miyamoto had this. People asked Miyamoto, like, what should I do to be a game designer? And his response was like, get out of the house. Right? He made Pikmin because he was in the garden. He made Nintendo because he had a dog. He made Star Fox because he hiked Fushimi Inari. Like, so I think having like a broad background, but also very clear kind of resilience and grit in the thing you want to do. Like teaching yourself how to program when you're a little kid is I didn't realize it at the time, but it was really instrumental in how I solved a lot of my career and product challenges, right? Just by like doing the work when there's no obvious guide.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. And I'm wondering what were some of the other challenges maybe you faced along the way, especially when you were starting out and trying to get your first interview and all that kind of what things you had to do to get to where you are now, I guess.
I gotta say, like, I'm pretty lucky. I've had bad interviews and I've not gotten jobs, and but the truth is, like, every time I apply to a job, I expect to get it. Like I don't have a ton of imposter syndrome, because I realize so much about success has to be being in the right place at the right time, and that's out of your control. Like so many things are. I think people conflate with the things that are out of their control with imposter syndrome. Like, yes, like you're lucky and you met this person and you got on really well and you stayed friends with them and they found out you're looking for a job. That's really, like, that's part of life, right? Is being in the right place, putting yourself in the right place at the right time. So I never felt like I had any real, like, hard lessons in figuring it out. I think the main thing that has helped me is being relatively extroverted, right? So I talk to people everywhere, and curious, like super interested in what people are doing. And I think those things in general have helped me build a network of people that when I need a job, things light up because like I'm generally extroverted and curious. So they have a positive. Most people have a positive impression, right? And what you leave there, there's that saying like people remember exactly what you do, but they remember how you made them feel.
Mhm.
I think that's super important, and I can't say that I've always been successful that way, but that has I think helped me in ways that I don't yet fully appreciate.
Yeah, I like that word curious. That's really a powerful word. I want that on my epitaph when I go.
Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. In fact, I always want a tattoo that says "No judgment," right here, so I always remember it because it's so easy to get judgment. But
Yeah.
you're talking about serendipity. My job at Full Sail, I got because I was walking my dog, and the vice president was walking their dog, and every day around 5 we were walking our dogs. And before I knew it, she says, "I need you on my team." And so my daughter always says, "You got your job because of our dog, Mom." Not because of my skills, of course.
Awesome.
Yeah, I
Right
think
on cue.
about that all the time. I mean, I went to a bar one night, right? Had I not gone to the bar, I wouldn't have met that person and I might not be a recruiter. So I think just getting out of your house is huge, and you never know who you're going to meet and who's going to change your life. And the butterfly effect is real. My story used to embarrass me, but I was confused. I didn't know how recruiting worked. I didn't understand how to get a job. I didn't really have anybody to guide me. So I reached out to a recruiter and they talked to me and they'd kind of give me some jobs, and it wasn't working, but I didn't know where to go from there. So I felt stuck. I met this person at a bar, and she referred me to her friend who worked at the company that I worked at before. And he brought me in for an interview, and I interviewed, and they told me that I didn't get the job, and I got a really generic decline. So I went to the founder's profile. I went through his LinkedIn recommendations. I'm a really determined person, so I really wanted that job. I really didn't take no for an answer. And I came across one of his referrals, someone who'd written a recommendation. And this guy reached out to me. He told me some of the best recruiters come from a customer service job. And I said, "Thank you. Would you like to talk? I didn't get this job. I'm really bummed." And he said, "I know the founder of the company," and he kind of coached me. And he said, "If I were you, I would reach back out to him if you want, if this is, what you're interested in, and you can tell him you're going to give him a call and you can tell him what you have to offer." And so I went back. I did a lot of research about different jobs, what it takes to be a recruiter, and I had my notebook prepared, and I messaged the CEO and I asked if we could have a call and he could give me a shot, because I said I would be his best employee. I'd work really hard. And he took the call, and I ended up getting the job, and I ended up being the best employee.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I kind of brute forced my way into the industry, but applying like
Pretty much, yeah.
jobs for 2 years and finally finding one that fit me. But yeah, you just have to be persistent, and like Barney said, get out and talk to people and just meet people. Networking is huge, especially in this industry. And Lizzie kind of answered this one already, but did you have people in your life that you could turn to for advice when you were looking to get in, or at any point, I guess, during when you've been trying to find a job or in the process of job hunting in this industry? I'm wondering how that went for you, or how those people helped.
So I used to be a game reviewer, right? Like I loved to play games, and I started writing. I was a good writer, so and I ended up reviewing a bunch of games from a studio called Looking Glass. They did Thief, they did System Shock, Ultima Underworld. Really, like, I think one of the seminal, if not the seminal, PC game studio ever. And because I wrote about them and I loved their games so much, I got to know them all. And it really was like those people in that studio who kind of gave me a stamp of approval when I started looking in the game industry. And because they are probably singularly the most like brilliant collection of people to work in a single studio together, I was very lucky. Like, again, I have no idea, I just love their games because they were great. And the first job I got in Seattle, Bungie, was because they called, the game director of these Looking Glass games and said, like, what's what do you know about Bernie? And he's like, he's a good guy. You should hire him. That was enough to get me, into the door. So I had the full loop.
Nice.
That was really it. Like I credit a lot of my career to the fact that I'm an extended family at Looking Glass.
That's
Yeah,
networking,
that's amazing.
right? And making effort to get to know people that unlocks some doors for you.
Because I love their games, right? Not because I want to network, because I love their games.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost more authentic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just working and nurturing, like, all the work we've done with IGDA or whatever organization, Diversity Collective, whatever organization I got involved in, just being authentic and showing up and helping and caring, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just reached out to people in my network, but people that I just kept in touch with and had fallen into kind of a similar role, people that I thought had it figured out. I just asked them, how did you get here? What were your tips? What did you do? And listen to them.
Cool. Yeah, here's a question from somebody who's watching that kind of is along the lines of what I was going to ask next, which is, do you have any advice for someone trying to switch from Salesforce or other software development to game development?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yes.
Facebook was full of people like this, right? Who they thought VR was cool. They'd worked in on web development, and they want to get into something, akin to real-time 3D emergent behavior, 6 stuff interaction. The real challenge I see with folks like that is like, how much are you really in a growth mindset? How much are you really humble? Not just like, I'm so humble, I'm the most humble. Really willing to take a step back and admit that you don't know a lot and learn a lot, which means losing seniority, losing influence, losing pay, all those things, right? Again, like, are you a tourist? We talked about this, like, are you a tourist? Are you local? Like, you really want to be somewhere, you have to like put down the roots to do it. I know lots of people who say they want it, but when you ask them those questions, they're not willing to do it. I mean, I could say, like, I want to be in the Olympics, right? Like, I want to be in the Olympics, and if I'm not willing to, get off my couch and eat better and exercise every day, like, that's just step one of 100 steps. So, I think that's a really tough question, right? And I don't blame people who don't want to give up their, I had a Facebook salary. I'm probably going to go back to the game industry in some way, and it's going to be a significant cut. I don't blame people for wanting to keep that salary. Like, that's a perfectly valid goal, but then don't tell me you want it, right? You have to be true to what you like, accept what you want.
Yeah, just going off that, I feel like you need to be clear on your why and be able to tell a compelling story, because if you just apply with your resume from Salesforce to a game developer job, they're not going to look at it. They're just going to reject it because they don't understand why you want it and they don't see the connection or the correlation, right? You apply for that, it's not going to happen. So I think getting to know people and being generally curious and being generally authentic, reaching out to people in your network, people you admire, I mean, asking for their story or games that you like, kind of getting more involved in the community, doing something that makes you stand out. Or can you talk to Tim? Can you do a game jam? Can you make an indie game? Can you teach yourself Unreal Engine and make a portfolio? Because if you don't do those things, no one understands the correlation.
If you're a good software engineer and you take a class, to do an Unreal class online for 6 weeks, you will find no shortage of people that will love your help on their little project. But you're going to do it after dinner, on the weekends, right? Like, you're not going to go to the gym. You're not going to go out to eat at your fancy restaurant with your, big paycheck. Like, you're going to do those things, right? That's the growth part.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then getting anywhere in life, I think, in general.
Yeah.
Showing up. Just show up.
Right.
Show up.
And doing
That's
it when
it.
it's hard, doing
Yep.
it on the weekends, doing it when you don't want to do it, because that's what you want.
And show up consistently, not just
Right.
one time.
Right.
Yeah, I just spoke at a college class in Austin when I was down there visiting, and one of the students was telling me that they were talking to like a hiring manager, and they didn't care about their student projects. They just wanted to see their game jam games and
All
that they had
right.
work done, and like
Oh, that's great
you
to
know
hear, Tim.
that shows that like you care enough to like spend a weekend of your time getting out there and like doing this thing in your free time. You know that you're dedicated at least that much.
We didn't have game jams when I was teaching game development, but I can tell you, like, one of my students is founded Supergiant, and his student project was fantastic. His team student project was fantastic, and I'm pretty certain that helped. I mean, I introduced him to the EA intern hiring people, but I'm almost certain the way he talked about his student project got him his job at EA and then launched his career. Right.
Yeah, I should clarify. They said they did care about like capstone projects, but other like earlier projects.
This was all capstone project.
Yeah.
A semester of learning, like a full 6-month dev cycle with 5 people. If you can talk about that articulately, I mean, to me, it tells you like, you know, I'm as a producer, I'm more interested in performance over time, not over a weekend.
Right.
If you can tell me like your full 6-month, 5-person team story, as a producer, I'm super impressed.
Yeah, 100%.
I also think being humble, right? When you're coming in and you don't have that experience to say, hey, I don't know anything. And I hear complaints, people come in and they have an adjacent career, or they just graduated school and they're excited and they know a lot from their projects, but it's not the same as working in the industry. So having that humbleness and knowing what you don't know and being willing to learn.
Absolutely. Yeah, here's another similar question is I'm curious what differences you've seen between the process of acquiring a job outside the games industry versus inside the industry. If you can speak to that at all, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, FANG companies, Facebook, you know, Apple, the hiring process is really standardized. Like, you understand one of them and you understand them all.
Yeah. Google
and Facebook's structure is very similar. I was recruited by Apple, and I was actually surprised how freewheeling their interview structure was. I expected it to be much more regimented, and it wasn't. Microsoft's is very standard. Like Amazon's, you can go read about it. I mean, you can go read the questions. Like everyone has crowdsourced them. Like it's very structured and it's very gameable. I think it's very gameable. The upside to that is it's relatively fair. Like Lizzie and Cami and I would all get asked the same questions, and we would compare our responses, and they try to remove the bias. Game industry is like every studio has a different hiring process. In which case it is like, it's good because in some ways it's less gameable, but in some ways I think it's worse because it leaves more room for bias, and it's not a fair apples to apples comparison. So there, I think one is more gameable and one is more biased.
Yeah, some studios, you know, every studio we work with, our main question is, what's your hiring process? One of the questions. And, you know, some have the whiteboard test, some don't even care. You know, it's interesting to hear how they evaluate, you know, their culture ad, you know, whatever it is. Everybody's different in the game industry. So we have to really nail it and ask that question to each studio we work with.
I recruited a lot for general tech before I got into games. And I think, just like you said, the questions are more standard. But in games, it's a lot more, tell me about what you built. And I think it's more, like, here's a situation we're facing in our game. How would you handle this? So I think it's more about the actual experience and less about leak code. I think the other thing, good or bad, about hiring in games, like you touched on, Bernie, everybody knows each other. And so backdoor reference is a real thing. Hey, you went to school with this person, you worked with this person. So when you're in the industry, it's important to leave on a good note, treat other people well, because everybody comes full circle, everybody eventually. And in tech, it's big enough that you can kind of get lost and not worry about that.
Yeah, it's musical chairs. Everybody just switches. Yeah.
Yeah, for better or worse, right? Because that's like
Right.
a diversity problem, right? If dudes just hire dudes they know, like you just hire dudes, and that's not great. But also on the other hand, like if I've shipped a game, like my leads on PvZ2, I don't know, we were really close. It's like I hate using war metaphor because it's really not fair, but it is like fighting with somebody. It's like you've gone and you've done something hard, like Outward Bound, right? It's a similar thing. You go struggle, and the people like my leads I shipped that game with, like I felt very close to. So would I hire them again? Damn right I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But but I see why it's a problem also. It's tough, right? I will say, by the way, as a producer, the problem with being a producer is invariably the more senior you are, the harder news you have to deliver or trigger, which means someone's not going to like it. Which means like I don't think there's any producer I know who could not dig up a fair negative thing to say about that. Right? I mean, because you show me a producer who hasn't made a hard decision, I'll show you a producer who's not ready for prime time.
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing about the small world, and that's bitten me a few times. Right. Like in stressful times in projects, they're not easy moments to navigate, and maybe I didn't navigate them as well as I could have, or maybe the person didn't have the full context, or both, and literally it's bitten me in the ass. Right. But you're like, that's also the job, at least for production, right? It's not, you can't be like a concept artist where everyone's like, oh my God, your stuff is beautiful. You can go wrong. Like everyone, that person, everyone loves a concept artist. But the producer, or I think that often is a very tough position.
Right.
I want to say something about, game jams or hackathons. And I know they're not the whole picture, but you do get a sense of how people work alongside each other. And that, to me, I used to go to the VR hackathons and just watch, for the 4 a.m, and where everybody's head was at, and the stressful, how are we going to, get to the end when we're not agreeing during the process. So I think I always recommend anybody to participate in jams or hackathons or whatever, because and then show live links to their work, just because it does show that you've had to work in that situation, maybe not over a long term like you're referencing, Bernie, but every little bit adds up, makes you more humble and gives you more soft skills maybe.
And you might meet someone there who you're going to work with, who's going to refer you, right? It's all about just connecting. And I think in those scenarios too, you also get a lot of cross collaboration, which is a skill I think studios look for a lot. And that can be something that gets in your way if you've only been a solo dev or artist or anyone in the industry.
100%. Totally.
Yeah, learning how everybody else works and the roles that you're going to interact with and what their processes and their tools are and how long things take for them. Like that's something you definitely need to know when you get onto a team.
Lizzie brought up a point where tech and tech in games is, in tech you have generally like engineering, product, and design, and in games you have 3 times the number of disciplines, like starting from concept, ending at QA. Like how many people touch a thing? Concept artists, environment artists, character artists, riggers, animators, effects artists, tech artists, game designers, engine programmers, like gameplay programmers, producers. That's already 11, 12, QA, 13, audio
engineers.
already talked about audio. 13, I'm already up to 13, right? So
right.
That's 13 disciplines that have to touch it before it releases. And all of them without that work, it doesn't ship, versus 3. And it's a radical, and the concept artist and the gameplay engineer couldn't be farther apart. I mean, in terms of skill set. So the scope of work is so broad. It's very hard for tech people who are generally very engineering centric, where engineers run the show. At Google, it's true. At Facebook, it's true. At Microsoft, it's true. They were all founded by engineers, so that's the culture, right? Like, engineers kind of don't run the show. I mean, maybe they get paid the most, but like game designers kind of run the show, right? Because we're all looking at them like, what's the game?
Right.
So it's a very different power dynamic, very different. And engineers have a hard time, I think, accepting it from them when they come from tech companies to game companies. They don't quite understand that. You don't know what you got till it's gone, right? I get to die, made all the decisions because I was the programmer. Like, yeah, now the producer's telling you what to work on, and no one likes that.
For sure. Yeah, all the great stuff. Thanks for sharing. We have a couple of people asking about the importance of college degrees and like, do recruiters really care about that? Is it more about, should they focus on their portfolios or do they need both? I'm just wondering, Cami or Lizzie, I'm sure you could speak to that.
I have an opinion because I've worked at 2 colleges. Well, and what I've helped build the advisory boards of different schools. And what I was surprised, because I come from a family where we went to college. There was no question. But what I've heard from our advisory board people is, we don't care if they go to college. We just want to know if they can do X, Y, Z. I don't know how, true that is. I know I don't have a lot of studios that look at the education at all. They look at the portfolio. They look at their track record. Now, I'm not sure if that applies at Google or, or Apple or any place, but some of our studios, they don't really care about, I always tell people to put your education at the bottom of your resume, because what your tech skills up at the top are what I think people look at first. So, but don't tell your mom and dad I said that.
Yeah, I think it depends on the role. I think you could go to college and not have a clear understanding of the real world or vice versa. I think that coding camps are a bit more okay these days, but for engineering generally, I do think that most studios would like you to have a degree. I think it's an entry point, right? But there is a point that you could get to where you've done so much, your degree doesn't matter. And I think once you get in, your degree doesn't matter. But it also depends on where the economy is, right? How many other applicants are there and how much do you need to stand out? That can be your portfolio, but that might also be your degree. But I think that college is becoming less important in certain areas.
I don't know. I mean,
I want to hear your opinion here, Bernie.
On the one hand, I think like college can be very difficult because it's resource intensive and it excludes people and access. On the other hand, like college is becoming high school, right? It's almost a necessity in so many places. I can tell if you're a programmer and you went to Caltech or Harvard Mudd or MIT, like that absolutely matters.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't buy that it doesn't matter. I will say that as a game designer, do I care about the like art and music and philosophy you've been exposed to? Are you going to read Kant on your own? Probably not, right? I couldn't read Ulysses by myself. So I find it hard, unless you are an exceptional person that will go and learn these things themselves. College is a structure by which you are allowed to go learn things and be pushed out of your comfort zone for the first time. If you can replicate that experience yourself, I think that's great. I highly doubt you can. Because, I mean, like most people are not exceptional and not self-motivated, not at 18. So,
not at 18.
And I have a son in college now, right? And I watch it and he's doing stuff for the first time and it's amazing. So I hate to rain on people's parade, but yeah, I think college is great. You should do it. You should go learn and do crazy stuff and learn things and take classes that you might never take again. You don't know what you're going to get exposed to, and you're never going to know when you get pulled back. That stuff affects how you develop at your ripe intellectual formative years. This is the time to go learn it. If you believe Miyamoto, sticking your head in the ground, getting in front of the screen is like absolutely the wrong thing to do. I mean, who am I to argue with Miyamoto, right?
Yeah, but I think having a degree to get a degree, personally, as someone who does not have a 4-year college degree, is not necessarily going to get you anywhere, depending on what it is that you study, right? A really broad degree, you might learn, you might build character, but real life has really valuable experiences too. In the world of games, programming, great for a degree, but maybe you're
Yes, absolutely, totally. I mean, I look, if you're an artist, if you're a concept artist, and all you want to do is paint and draw pictures, then I can totally see a path where you do that, and you feed yourself the input necessary to be a great artist. Like, right? Totally. But again, like, my wife is a modern dancer, and she went to a conservatory, and she learned like technique like nobody's business. And could she have done it herself? I don't think so. Right? So I mean, it's tough. Like I think it's tough. Like, I think it's really not an easy. It's not an easy answer, and it's not an easy one to hear. That, like, you know, but life is full of advantages and disadvantages. Right? If you don't have a particular affordance in an area, then you have to go build it somewhere else. Right? It's not a spreadsheet. Right?
And if you don't get into Caltech, and you're just, you know, going to the classes at maybe the local college, but you're driven, doesn't matter where you go. If you're driven, you're going to drive there.
Yeah.
And I wasn't that driven, to be clear. I needed people to push me along, right?
Yeah.
I was more interested in learning how to talk to girls than like studying anything. So, you know, I needed that push. Like, I didn't discover my drive till much later in life.
Yeah.
I think there's also things you can do to show that you care. You could take an Udemy class. You can take all kinds of different extracurricular certificates or what have you to show that you have the growth mindset. Like you said, Bernie, you want to continue to learn. You want to teach yourself X, Y, Z. So maybe you studied something that is not where you want to end up, but I think you can tack on courses and learnings that show that you're headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
I mean, plenty of people drop out of school, right? Like, they discovered the thing they wanted. Like, I don't need this anymore. They're gone, right? So it's not for everyone, and you know, these are all general rules. Like, I think in general it can help a lot of people, but it's not deterministic of your future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm wondering, like, what does a great resume or portfolio look like to you, and how should it evolve and change as a person moves through their career? Somebody specifically asked for Bernie, what would impress you about a potential applicant for a producer role that doesn't have game-specific producer experience? We can kind of like put those two questions together.
It's tough because I don't screen resumes anymore. At least, like, so I interviewed a lot of people inside Oculus and Reality Labs, and I don't screen the resumes. They usually get to me. Mm-hmm. And I worry that a lot of resume screening now seems to be like AI and word filter driven, so it's hard to know, right? And that's something actually for Lizzie and Cami. I think the question for Lizzie and Cami is like, what gets them to deliver a resume to me, right? Like, if you're the person who's going through the applicant pool and doing the screening interview, you the two of you will find someone that you think is a candidate worth submitting, and then it'll get submitted to me and or someone like me, and then I'll go, you know, I can talk about the interview process more than resume. So I feel like Lizzie and Cami would be better for resume.
Okay.
Go, Lizzie.
Okay. Let me tell you about how to do your resume, because I've looked at a lot. If you're junior, if you're joining, I don't care that you worked at Dairy Queen. Get that off your resume. That's not relevant, right? I want your school projects. I want everything that pertains to the industry. And in general, I want a really clear statement about why. Tell me a story. I took this break to care for my family, and I realized I wanted to get into this industry. I did this, you know. Tell me a story about why it's you, why you're good. Know that a recruiter looks at your resume. I didn't believe it when I started for 5 or 10 seconds. It's a scan. So you need to have it be clear. You need to have it stand out. I think if you went to a great school, I'd put it at the very top. I would list all of your skills really clearly. Do not rate your proficiency. Do not say that you are a C++ expert, because that is your expertise. Someone really senior is going to look and say, this person thinks they're a C++ expert. So don't ever do the rating thing on how good you are. List the companies. If the company closed, like if you have some breaks, try and explain why there's breaks. There's your studio closed. family was sick, whatever, you got laid off, right? There's so many reasons, but call out any elephants in the room, I think. And please don't have your resume be over 2 pages. If you have a ton of experience, just put the companies you were at, right? And put bullet points. I don't want to read your paragraphs. Put bullet points and then put all of the technical skills so I can know if you're technical, what skills or what tools you used in each job, because those are the questions that I want to know. One more thing, use words like built, for instance. Just talk about what actions you took specifically and make it really clear what you personally did, not what your team did, because those are 2 different things.
Yeah, I did everything Lizzie just said. But, and Bernie, right now I've got like 3 studios looking for producers. So we bring on our whole team to talk to the studio and listen to what they want, because each studio is different. What they're looking for in their producers could be very different. So we try hard to evaluate, what's the motivating factor of that candidate, and does it align with the culture at that studio? Because everybody's different. Every studio is different, and trying to, narrow the aperture. So we're sending over only the candidates that we think might fit.
So I was part of the November Facebook layoff, right? And I spent so much time rewriting my resume and formatting it, and like it's a lot of work, right? And so I didn't mean to dodge the question in that I'm more like, I rewrote that thing. I don't know. I basically threw out my old resume and rewrote it from scratch, right? Which is kind of like the code refactoring. Like it's all tech debt, all old, and I just threw it out. So it's super important to, I think, tell a good story and be succinct and have it formatted well. Like, one advice, I started using Canva for my resume rather than like Word or Google Docs, because you have much more control of formatting and it looks better and all that stuff. So I think there's a ton of things. It really is like a deliverable. You have to really take it super seriously. And your first version is not going to be the best version. You're going to have to rewrite it and get feedback over and over again. And you'll get conflicting feedback. You have to figure it out. But I was lucky that I had some people to really help me rewrite it and read it and give me feedback. So that was really, as a resume writer, that is what I did. Like I took it very seriously. And I spent hours and hours and hours writing it and editing it and formatting it over and over again.
Thank you.
And I'm not even sure that's what really got me my current, like, even the stuff I'm interested in. Like, I don't really know. Like, maybe they just wanted to make sure that I wasn't, I don't know how it affected the hiring process of the discussions. But I guess it helped.
Yeah.
It helped.
I can tell you that taking it not seriously and if having typos on your resume is a quick way to get nixed. I will tell you to fix them, but a studio is going to be done with you. And if you have links, link, this is huge. If you've worked on a project, link it if it's good, right? Or if it's your extracurricular thing. Do not include your GitHub or your portfolio link. That is broken. Kind of just basic, but I see that a lot.
So something Lizzie said is actually really true. There's so many landmines that you're going to step on that you'll never know about. Right? They're never going to be like, hey, the reason why we didn't move forward with you because this link was broken. You're never going to know. It's just going to be a no.
Yeah,
right?
You're just out.
And it's not their job to let you know. They're looking at 100 resumes. Like, yep, nope, yep. Right? Like it's a scale. It's a processing problem. Right?
If it's only 100 resumes, that's good, because we know those big studios are getting 2,000 plus resumes, probably 4,000. Yeah, one studio we're working with just mentioned that they had, I think, 2,700 applicants for that internship that they were tracking, and it's a small studio, so how do they get through? They don't spend much time, so make it stupid easy for them to find out the information that's exactly what they want to see about you. I don't know if I phrased that right. Just make it easy. Have those links real quick. Test them every time. Test it before you send it out, because sometimes it may work and sometimes the next time it may not. So just like Lizzie says, get those links. linked.
And
If you're a producer that ships a resume with errors, like I don't trust you to ship a game without.
yeah,
Right.
Like that's just the truth, right?
Right.
You know, and what's more important than your own reputation? Like the way you project yourself in the professional world is more important than any game you ship. Like that's the basis of everything you are. So if you're gonna, be shoddy in your resume, like I'm definitely not gonna be like, I'm not gonna give you the benefit of the doubt because there's 9 other people down the road who didn't do that. Who are like super careful.
yeah. One other recruiter tip: please don't name your resume. Do you know how many resumes I have named resume? Name your resume first name, last name, maybe the date, so you'll know which version it is.
Right.
I had one of those today. You make me laugh that you just said that.
It's a thing.
And yeah, I used to read through resumes, and so many of I've been playing games since I was 6 years old. Yeah, we all have like. You don't need to tell me that.
You don't need to tell me
That's
that.
great. Yeah. So, going on that whole 2,700 resumes coming in, some people are asking about networking and what's the best way to do that, because that's what's going to get you up to move you up in that pile of 2,700. And somebody said, they feel like they might be a bother if they reach out cold on something like LinkedIn. Is that something you'd recommend? Like, can you give some advice about how somebody might go about doing that?
Well, listen to Lizzie's story. When you first started, Lizzie, you showed how creative you were, and politely persistent is the name of the game, right? So I'm all for it.
My name. No, I think people are really scared about being annoying, and it's a numbers game to some degree, but I think if you reach out, you have to be clear about why you're reaching out. It's not a recruiter's job to find you a job. Don't ever email a recruiter and say, hey, find me a job. That's not how it works, right? Hey, I've been researching your company. I am interested because blank. Don't even actually send your resume, right? I'd like to hear more about your studio. I'd like to hear about where you got today, and know that you're going to get rejected most of the time, but a couple people are going to talk to you and give you tidbits of advice. And that's all it takes. And LinkedIn might be cold. If you feel uncomfortable, you can find a template online, but go to an event in real life if you feel uncomfortable with LinkedIn and just talk to people. Go to a bar, go walk your dog, You never know who you're going to meet. But the more you put yourself in those situations, the more likely it is.
And one question I always suggest asking, you don't ask for the job. You say, here's my resume. What can I be adding to my resume to make me a strong candidate for a studio like yours?
Yeah.
What can I still be learning and adding to my resume that would make me a good candidate for your studio? I think I like to hear that if someone's asking me that question.
The visualization you're talking about is like, do you want to be on opposite sides of the table or the same side of the table? Hey, can you look at this with me, or I'm selling you, right? Then you sort of put in opposition. I have a story about someone who wants to ask me to be their mentor because they want to break up. They want to move from QA to production, and I said to them, "Great, why don't we schedule a time? Come with some questions you're really interested in, and let's talk." And then they never followed up. And I told them, when I was leaving, I said, that really, I want to give you feedback about that thing. It didn't sit well with me because you asked me a thing and you never followed up. And their explanation was, I thought you were busy. I didn't want to bother you. First of all, if you're a producer and you don't want to follow up on a difficult subject, you're doomed, right? You're never going to make it because no one wants to give you the time of day when they're like trying to fix bugs or everything's on fire. So I said, if you don't show that persistence, like, I don't know if you'll ever, you don't really quite understand what it means to be a producer. And then I said, and if you think you have a better sense of my time than I do, then you don't really know what I do, right? I don't offer my time like I'm throwing around dollar bills on an IPO day or something, right? Like I offer you my time. It's my responsibility to own it, right? So if you think if you are worried that someone's going to find you a annoying or something like that, then you could think about your language. But one thing I always remind people, and I think about this when I'm competing in a sport, is you control your controllables. You cannot control what the other person is thinking. You can only control your messaging.
I'll drink to that.
Good message.
That's good.
Right? Don't tell me you can't write a good email or message that says like it's respectful and interesting and engaging. Control your controllables, right? If you're trying to control what's in my head, like you're not going to control it. And maybe I'm in a bad mood, or I had a fight with my partner, or whatever, right? I just got laid off, and I don't want to answer. I don't want to be like, look, it's not a good time for me, or I'm super busy, right? That's on me. But if you're going to worry about stuff that's out of your hands, then you don't understand the issues, the concept of scope.
Very true.
I think you have to get out of your own head too. I mean, why didn't this person answer me? For instance, maybe they got laid off. Maybe they get 26 LinkedIn messages a day. Maybe they didn't even see your message. You don't know. So you just have to kind of keep going. And I like what you said. If someone offers you their time, don't feel bad. They've agreed to it, right? Meet with them. But see, maybe you can do something for them. I think it's just about being genuine and connected.
Yeah,
Try to
absolutely.
take it personally.
Yeah.
It's really like, it really isn't all about you. It's all about like, it's timing, you know, a rejection today could be an acceptance tomorrow, you know, a year. Like it taking things personally is absolutely, like I got laid off. I don't take it personally. Like companies do what they do. I had zero ill will towards my own company. Really, I get zero, you know, because it can't be personal. I mean, it's easy for me because 11,000 people, it's never personal, but, it's not personal. Like you got to move on past it. And I think it's the more you let go of it, the more the more effective you can be.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a hard thing. So let's say you get through all the hoops and you finally land an interview. How should someone prepare themselves for an interview loop in the industry, in the games industry? And are there any things you normally do to prepare yourself for one that is, things that have worked in the past for you, basically?
I have very specific ideas about this. Is that
Okay.
you should keep a diary of all the interesting things you happen to you in a project. Like I used to keep a diary like at Oculus when something good or bad happened, like of note, and I'd write a little paragraph about it. And at the end of the half of the year, I'd have a good summary of everything that I did. And it was great for reviews because I could talk about it, but I keep them, and Mark, I'm sorry I did this. I kept this on my own personal email, my account, because like I wanted to remember those things, right? And I keep a general professional like story of what happened to me on Destiny that went well and that didn't. What happened to me on PvZ2 that went well, and it was all written like years ago, and I can go back and I'm going to remember it all, right? So you should keep track of all those things like a journal, because you're never going to remember them when it counts. And before an interview, go read them. And the other thing is be prepared, like have very specific stories in mind that you're ready to talk about. Like you kind of know what they're going to ask you, right? Like you talk to a recruiter and the recruiter will prep you. Have stories about this, have stories about this, have stories about that. Tell me a good story that convinces me you were there and you just didn't read some game developer postmortem. Tell me things that you could only know when you're in the shit. And then I'll believe you, right? That like if you don't prepare for this thing, like it's you're showing up for a big event or race or like the World Series or something like that. Like no one walks on to the whatever, Final Four court or the NBA championships without a ton of practice that week. Like they're the best at what they do and they still practice before they get out there. So like you better practice, because if you don't, you're going to get eaten alive by someone who did. Guaranteed it. I've seen both candidates who are like super well prepared and like winged it, and it is obvious. It's amazing how different they did. You can really tell.
I can't wait to read your book, Bernie, with all those journals that you've had. It's going to be really interesting. History of the game industry.
Mm-hmm.
They're mostly about how times I screwed up.
Yeah. I think that's important too, though, being able to talk to things you've done wrong so you can show your character. Things that go right and go wrong are both important, and you're going to be asked about that. And if you stammer, it's not going to work. Then I think 101 that I'm so surprised that people don't do, check out what you're interviewing for. If it's a game, play the game, research the company. If download the app, whatever it is, right? Be able to speak to it and show that you care about their product in particular. Because if you don't, someone else has researched it. Someone else created a guild in the game and wants to tell the CEO about that. And you're not even sure what the product is, right?
Yeah, that's part of the preparation, right? You have to do your home. You have to do all your homework, and be ready to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
I will say that a lot of, one interview with Loop I did recently, I told them, like, I don't play your studio's games. Is that important? Because they don't really, they're not what I spend my time on. And in this case, the studio's like, we used to care and now we don't. Mm. My friend who worked on WoW said they used to hire they said they would rather hire, back in the day, they would rather hire noobs who played WoW knew it inside and out than really established and thoughtful, experienced designers. I don't think they do that anymore, but what happens when you do that is, like, you inbreed your game so that it only appeals to your existing audience, right? And sure. You don't really look at it from a critical eye. But I think it's important to talk about, like, to have a plausible story of, like, what you bring to the table if you don't play their game. Because I think you're right. Like, if you don't play their games, whether they say it or not, it's a disadvantage.
But I think it's okay to be honest if you don't play it and that's not what you're into, because they're sure going to find out when you join, right? But I think at least having the courtesy to check it out, play through it, read some reviews, watch the tech demo, whatever it is, just so you can speak to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we have some questions from people about, like, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and, like, do you think those are just buzzwords that people throw around, or is it really important? And, like, what advice do you have to people from those backgrounds that are trying to make their way into the games industry, and they're probably facing some extra challenges, being from their backgrounds or from? What can you say to those people and how they can make themselves stand out or be considered for the roles that they're applying for?
Well, I really think, you can look at a game, you can look at a studio and look at their games and get an idea if they're considering diversity just by the games they make, right? You can ask that question if you're interviewing. What kinds of things does your studio do to support diversity? That's not the way I want to say it. But it's pretty, I'm really an advocate for, and I'm really happy to begin to see studios taking it seriously, from the leadership all the way down, taking it seriously by, having leadership show that learning about diversity is important. And mentoring diversity all the way down to the internships, whatever. So it is. I see it turning around a little bit, but we do it. We have a panel at GDC next week, and we're doing a lot of talk about diversity with the game studios.
Yeah, I think I would find a mentor, that someone that can lead you, that diverse person who's, somewhere in their career that could guide you. I think it's your job to interview the studio and see if they really care about diversity hiring, or if it's a buzzword to them. Because for some, it is something they put on their website, and some truly care. And it's important to find a studio that you want to work at and that supports you long term. I think there's so much talk about diversity hiring, but not about support throughout, right? So are you going to have an advocate? Are you going to have a mentor? Are you going to feel comfortable day to day? But I feel hopeful, and I feel that more and more companies are paying attention to this and really being thoughtful, because in the past it has been a circle of people that know each other, and that just, continues. And then you have a bunch of people and you don't have any diversity, and how are you going to get it? So I think check out the team, check out their statements on the website. We were talking about this before this started, or maybe during the show, Cami's in Women in Games, but there are a lot of different, very specific organizations that are various forms of diversity advocates. So I would get engaged with one of those organizations and hear other people's stories.
I mean, this is a super hard problem, right? Like, and I don't know what the answer is. I think it's pretty clear that diversity is not a driving force in hiring, because, I mean, it just isn't, right? And there's more attention paid to it. The challenge is that diversity fundamentally means you welcome different points of view and there's a good business reason for it, right? Like, you don't want to be an echo chamber. You want to have lots of points of view. You want to appeal to lots of different players. You want to see the flaws in your own product and design hypotheses. Like, it's really important to have many points of view. I'll say that sometimes, right, it also can be overwhelming, right? It can be, inside a company like Facebook where everyone has a point of view. I mean, Tim, you saw this, right? Like, how do you separate the noise from real signal? That can be really difficult. So there's a good business reason for it, but that means you have to find leadership that is actively willing to hire people that can make them uncomfortable with a different point of view. And then you have to ask yourself, how many of those leaders exist? And statistically speaking, few. So, this, and if your leader doesn't support it, then it's going to be a struggle. That being said, control your controllables, right? That is out of your control. All you can do, you're looking for a job, is you kind of want to find your first one and get your feet in and get some, ship some titles or do some stuff. And then you can, maybe it's the right place for you, maybe it's not. It's a commercial relationship. Like, you must get something out of your relationship with them. And if you get those things, you may decide to leave and do something better at a place that is more welcoming when the time comes. So, like, I tend to be very pragmatic about it. I'm older, right? And there's a lot of ageism in the game industry.
I can talk about that.
So how am I supposed to feel about it? Yet I know a ton of people, so probably people are like, well, Bernie, like, you're old, but you have a lot of, know a lot of people. Like, yeah, I do. So, I mean, it's super complicated, right? So, I mean, I have no answer to that, really. Like, there's a diversity problem. Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, people are papering it over. Well, how does that change your day? Like, how does it change your career plan? You're going to give up?
Yeah, I think you need to make sure you're going to be comfortable somewhat where you are, though, and that it's a environment that supports you, and lean on external support when needed, and stand up for yourself, right? I think it's okay to have the conversations of what you need once you get in, and you're a challenging perspective, or you're a different perspective, right? Then own that. That's beautiful. You have a lot to contribute.
And organizations change, right? Like, a good friend of mine who's a designer, a woman, went to a studio that had probably lots of controversy around it. And I know she takes no shit from anybody. And if there's a problem there, she'd be the first to call it out. And she's happy. She's like, that things are different. Things are changing, right? So things that happened 5 years ago may not represent the company anymore. So you have to give the organizations a chance to change as well, right? They're not people. They're only like inhabited. They're run by the people that inhabit it. So places that were not great to work at 5 years ago may be very different now, right? And you have to listen to the whatever whisper network that women or queer people have about people of color have. Like, the whisper network is real. Listen to the whisper network. They know better than me.
Yeah, 100%.
I have had, candidates ask me, is it a safe place there? They actually ask, and, can I talk? Will I be able to talk? Will they hear my voice? Which I think is, a valid conversation. But, there's so many good Discord channels where you can be asking those questions with, I just think there's a lot of places where you can begin to find out what it's like there.
And the question about whether they hear my voice, if you're like an AP coming in, I'm not going to hear your voice about anything.
Right. I don't mean it that way.
Tell me
But
but I think that there's an expectation of like, show me the bug burn down chart, build some trust. You know,
Yeah.
anybody, even if you're a white male, like your voice not gonna be heard as an AP either. Like so what's their expectation, right? Like, are you there to weigh in to change the culture? Are you there to weigh in to like ship a product? And by shipping a product, you gain skills. So like, I would ask that person, are you going to hear a voice about what? If something awful is going on, damn right they better hear your voice. But if you, but don't conflate that with like, I think the studio should be a 3 days of remote, 2 days in office. Like, no one's going to listen to you.
no, I don't think they were thinking that. Yeah, they were more concerned about
safety is different, right? Like, yes, if they're toxic, abusive people, then you can definitely find that shit out. Like, that is definitely discussed, and they're definitely people to avoid.
Yeah,
that is a whole different question.
Yeah, that's a great discussion. Thanks, and the person who asked the question is very grateful. So really appreciate your perspectives on all of this and transparency. It's what we need here. We have a lot of people asking about portfolios. Does a producer need a portfolio? If they don't have a portfolio, how long should they work on it before they start actively applying for jobs? So
we're the worst because we have no portfolio. The producer has zero portfolio. Like, there's no code to point to. There's no art. There's no nothing. You are literally like you and your backpack, like whatever. Who's that? Kane in Kung Fu, like wandering the earth. You got it.
Yeah.
there are lots of there in producer interviews I expect for them to unpack their process.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what your sprint looks like. Tell me what happens on every hour of every day. Tell me why this doesn't work. Tell me how you fix this problem. Like, and if every producer has ever had problems getting people to update their Jira tickets and get to stand up and report their bugs and close their tasks, like there's a million things that we struggle with all the time. If you can't tell me like how you would do it and how you do it better or what problems, like that's your portfolio. Is your I used to have producer candidates like go to a big whiteboard and like draw me your roadmap, like build me a sprint schedule and tell me what happens on every day. When do you do code lock? How do you enforce that code lock? How after code lock something has to come in. How do you do that? Right? Like any producer who's been through any sprint will be able to talk through a million more stories about how that should happen.
Absolutely.
And if they can't tell me that story, then I know they didn't do it. Right? That's your producer portfolio. Is like your concrete process learnings. It's not as good as pictures for all the artists out there.
Do you have any advice, Cami or Lizzie, for people working on portfolios outside of production and like how long they should spend on those? And
art portfolios, have a good one. I don't know. I'm a big fan of ArtStation. Make sure only your best work is showing. Get rid of all the other stuff.
Yes,
please.
Yeah, and that's going to evolve too. Every job it's going to evolve, and make sure that when you're showing your work, if it's a part of a group project, you show exactly what your part of that project was, so you can identify that. I have been talking to a lot of artists lately that they've said, I can't, everything of mine is under NDA, so I don't know really how to show it. And so they're mad because they've spent so much time focusing on that job that they've been doing. They haven't done much of their own work, which is understandable. So they're always really struggling with how best to show their current skill set along the way. I don't always have an answer for that, but NDAs can be a little tricky.
That can be tricky. I think maybe you should play around with the Unreal Engine. Maybe you should create some art in whatever the latest tool is when it comes out, so you can showcase that you care and you are on it. And I think if you're working on a top secret project, if the world has shown us anything, you should probably be prepared for the very worst. So what are you going to do if you get laid off tomorrow, right? What content can you create? How can you showcase yourself? And I think it's important to never forget that, even if things are swell where you are.
Yeah, a lot of people laid off right now are doing the Blueprint, Udemy, Unreal practice sessions. I'm hearing this over and over. So
yeah.
I know a lot of artists who will, like, you know, keep their work, even if it's owned by the studio, under password protection, so they can show
That's
it
right.
like in person,
uh-huh.
as long as it's, you know, not for an unreleased game. Like if the game comes out, you could probably show work that was in progress that shows a portfolio or something like that. And it's probably not, you know, it's probably in breach of contract. But I also feel like it's not equitable to hold artists over the barrel like that and not be able to show their work. You know, there should be some kind of fair use exemption, personally, I think. But I would encourage artists to do, again, what they need to do to make sure that they can represent their work in a way that minimizes any kind of, you know, any kind of exposure to them. But in the end, you have to really look out for your own career. And if you need to show things that, like, you know, shouldn't be off the Perforce directory, like, maybe you're going to have to figure out a way to do it. But what's the choice? Like that or not pay your bills? You know,
Right.
you have to do what you have to do to take care of yourself. That would be my advice to a friend.
I think a lot of people are learning that this year as some of the cream of the crop have been laid off, right?
Oh yeah. Next day, I couldn't, you know, all access to my systems were cut off. So, which sucked, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Somebody was wondering if you had any suggestions for producer books or resources that you recommend.
A lot. I mean, no, not really. I mean, you know, there are books on production and Agile and stuff like that. I mean, it's hard. They're not easy. I think a lot of it is, you know, you figure it out. There are resources. Grant Shankwiller has a book. I actually recommended to somebody GDC. It used to be called Gama Sutra, which is a very name, but they compiled all the postmortems. Like Upton Grossman was the editor of the postmortems. Like, I actually think reading stories about all the shit that went right and went wrong in all these games is really good.
I think your journals are going to be what everybody's going to need, Bernie.
It's not personal, right? It's like all, you know, I think someone told me this, like monks used to do this, like some monastery, like a monk would write about their day, right? They like sit down and reflect. It's like meditation, daily meditation. It's like, think about like what good thing happened today? What bad thing happened today? Write it down. And then, you know, that's it, right? And then when you go back on it, you see this pattern. But it's hard to be, I mean, there's not an easy path to be a producer. You kind of have to be like pain in the ass and stubborn and organized and, you know, flexible and all those things. And it's really like, it's not and producer means different things from different studios. Some places producers are project managers, right? Some places producers are more product managers, and it really depends on the place.
Absolutely. Bernie mentioned whiteboard questions before. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about whiteboard interview questions and how somebody should approach those, and same for like take-home style questions too that game studios will give you.
When someone gives you a test?
Yeah, like if you have to do a test for a job or...
Yeah,
you know,
don't blast through it. Check it a lot of times. If you blast through it and send it in, I think you're going to fail. Spend a little bit more time. Spend the weekend. Save it. Check it a couple of days later. Really be sure. Show your work. Read the instructions. If it asks you to put how much time you spend on each question, put that, right? Go back to the nitty-gritty details, because that, just like your resume, shows your attention to detail. It just shows how much you care. And for whiteboarding, good luck. practice leak code, or I guess first figure out what kind of questions you might get, right? Search the internet, ask your friends, ask your recruiter, figure out the genre of question so you can prepare for it. because just there's so many things you could prepare for, right? So it's helpful to know.
Lizzie said something that's really important is to slow things down. In questions like that, it's almost like you want to illustrate your thought process while you're at the whiteboard. So when you're making an assumption, say like, I'm making an assumption of X. If you need clarification, stop and ask for clarification, right? Slow things down. It's not like a speed contest. It's like they're trying to figure out, a good interviewer is going to try to figure out your thought process, not the end result. Ideally, there are times when the end result must be right, but you can't really control that. All you can control is your process, right? And how you get there. So talk through it, slow it down, and practice. I think you said this, practice. Like, have someone put you through it. You know, on the X Facebook group, there's a bunch of people like, hey, can someone do a practice interview with me? People like, yeah, let's do that. And they'll go out and they'll do a practice interview. You know, they say in baseball, like if you hit a home run, act like you've done it before. Like it shouldn't be your first time doing it, right? Like you should have practiced this 100 times before you show up.
We used to do, Tim and I used to host career events where we would have a bunch of people who were mentors for whiteboarding, and they would walk people through it and let people get up there and really push them through actual whiteboard tests. So just like your Facebook group, was really helpful.
Same with art portfolios. Get real other artists to give you critique.
Oh yeah.
Right. Same sort of thing. Like make sure that you drive around this multiple times.
Same with your resume. Same with everything. I have a friend who's a software engineer, and she bought a whiteboard. Do a question every night for a couple months, right? That's making sure you're going to ace it.
Wow, that's cool. Good for them.
You want to be prepared. I mean, ultimately, how well you do in the interview matters. That's how well you level into the organization. It's hard to get a promotion. So it's really, really important to take it seriously. It's also really important to know that different organizations might level you differently. And right now, if you're coming from FANG, like you said, Bernie, you might have been kind of on a higher end of the pay scale, and that may be a little bit different. So be okay with going somewhere new, and think about the skills you're going to learn, and don't get too wrapped up in small details, depending on your life circumstances, right?
I want everyone to remember Lizzie's candidate who bought a whiteboard and is practicing that shit. Because that's the person you're competing against, right?
That's a great story. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's who you should. That's your competition.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's say you finally get through all this, you actually get a job offer. What should be your next steps, and like how does somebody? Do you have any advice for negotiating, say, at the junior level and the mid level and senior level? Like that's the only real chance you get to negotiate is when you like are at that. You've got the job offer. Like, do you have advice for people on that?
Conflict of interest for me to answer. So no.
It's tricky. You have to be, maybe ask around and see if anybody else has had that experience. You know, some studios come up right away with a final offer. I mean, they're not going to go any farther past that offer. And so you take it. But then there's, 10, 14 months ago, it was a signing bonus. It was, equity, it was all these things that they could keep adding on. So people didn't have to just stop at the offer. They could keep asking for more. I don't know. It's a tricky balance. And if you ask for it, another 5,000, 10,000, whatever, and they say no, well, you can still take the job.
Yeah, they're probably not going to pull it. You have to think about where the economy is. You have to think about what is the offer. Yeah. People are so wrapped up. This is $5,000 less than I'm making right now. Who cares? What's the opportunity? Who do you get to work with? Where is it going to take you in your career? And I say who cares as a jaded recruiter, right? But if you are making over a certain amount of money, really, who cares about $5,000? Or, I mean, sometimes it's a larger amount, right? So really consider in the pros and cons, what does this offer? What does the equity mean? What's the growth potential? What's my promotion cycle? It's not just all about money. And you don't deserve a sign-on bonus also. I mean, get out of your head what your friends make, get out of your head what you've heard. I think right now we're in a unique time where salary ranges are generally posted. So you can check that out, but also understand maybe you're in the middle, maybe you leveled in the middle, right? So there's many different reasons to take a job.
I've heard of stories where offers get pulled, and I don't know how true they are, right? Like, oh, someone's trying to negotiate salary, they pulled the offer and gone to the next person. Again, that's not in your control. All you can do is the thing you think is the right process for you. And I think everything is up for discussion. And if you're respectful about it, like I'm in the process of talking to somebody right now, and I don't know if I'll take it, but I asked them like, what's negotiable?
Great question.
And the recruiter told me, and I was thinking, well, if the recruiter's lying, I've got worse problems than this, right? So you got to take it for granted. Like the recruiter's being honest with you and said, you know, this is negotiable, this is not. I did some research online, and I said, what about this? And they kind of explained some stuff to me. And I said, all right, well, then I'll negotiate in this, and, you know, what about this and that, right? And you know, I tried to be reasonable. And I think part of it is understanding your strength as a candidate, right? Are you uniquely qualified to do this job? How many other people are going to find like you, right? And the more unique you are, the more you can probably negotiate. So, you know, you have to ask, you have to trust what they say. You can't be disrespectful. You have to do your own research and figure out what's the range. And then you can ask what you're comfortable with. And if they turn around and be like, sorry, we were capped, you know, is that on you? Is it on them? Does it say more about that? You know, and again, to Lizzie's point, is it depends on your circumstance too. Like if you really need a job, and you know, then maybe it's okay to accept it. Maybe you buy the first dress you see in the store because like the party's in 30 minutes and you don't have time to shop, right? That's okay. But the other thing is, don't hold it against the company if you make that decision. Don't be like, God damn it, I took this thing and I shouldn't. Like, this is your decision. You should own it and don't resent it, right? Like, if you really want that job at the studio and you're willing to not worry about it, like, that's the money you took. So the story I have is, you know, when I joined Oculus, I thought I was quite a competent producer. And I knew that the people who joined Oculus 2 years before me had, 10 times more stock than I did. And I thought that I was at least as good a producer as they were. But it doesn't matter. Like, they took the risk early. You know, they weren't working at PopCap on this super high visible IP. They worked on some crazy startup idea to make a VR headset. And they got rewarded for it. So was I going to be resentful of them? No. Like, that was my choice, right? You can't. Comparison is a thief of joy. Do not, like, own your decision and, like, don't be weak about it. Like, this is your decision. That's your control.
I like what you said about how you approach it too. I mean, I think that's a lot of it, right? Just not that I deserve this or anything, right? If you have actual life circumstances, that is one thing. But I think the most important thing is to be clear about that from the start. You can't tell me you need 100K and then when you get an offer, tell me you need 200,000. That's not how it's going to work. You can't say, oh, by the way, I have all this stock or this sign-on I'm leaving at the end. That offers have to go through a bunch of approvals. You need to tell people what you want, and you need to set the right expectations. Here are my circumstances. Here, people can ask you what you're making. Here's what I would like to make, and here's why. And then you can kind of get feedback on that. But you just need to be clear throughout and unwavering. And if you get 3 different offers and one is way more money, you can share that, right? That's a different scenario, but you can't just randomly change your ask.
And people do.
But that's not the right way to do it. That's when
no.
Die, right? Because where did this come from? No, I don't have another $40,000 or whatever.
again, this is like if you're a producer, you're changing a spec on me. I'm going to expect you to handle scope creep, and you can't handle your own fucking budget. Like, this is a terrible indicator of someone's like clarity and decision making. When I interviewed for this role, a particular role, it could be at one level or the next level up. And I knew that the next level up would be, I could make an argument for it. But the truth is, like, I didn't want the responsibility. Like, it was significant, money doesn't come for free, right? Like, it's just harder. And I said, I'd rather be on the high end of the lower level, right? And I could make a good argument, and probably, I don't know if I would win it, but I would have made a very rational argument that I fit that other role, that other level. I even told my manager, you remember Stephanie Liu, Tim, right? I told Stephanie Liu, like, I had no desire to be a director at Meta. And it's not because like, Meta, like, directors made whatever twice as much as I did probably. But they dealt twice as much crap, like stuff I didn't want to do. So, when you ask for money, you are implicitly saying, I'm going to do more. And if you're going to do more, right, like, you better be ready to do it. Yeah. And I told the recruiter, like, I think I'm okay with this level. When I listened to what was required, I was like, yeah, I can't do that stuff without a lot of goodwill built up in an organization. So it's one thing to be promoted to it, but to get hired into that level is a lot of pressure. And look, people do it, and people get away with it, and you got to know yourself, right?
I think you also have to realize it's just different times than 6 months ago. Things have changed, right? You're not, unfortunately, in the driver's seat as much as you were, and you don't have as much negotiating power right now. And that's just how it is. So companies are watching their budget, and the crazy days are over for now. It's all a cycle, right? And there's still some places that will, I'm not saying you can't counter. You can definitely try, but I think a lot of studios are going to be a lot more strict with what their max is.
It's a candidates. Yeah. They've got access to candidates everywhere right now. They're
globally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's a different market, right?
For sure.
But again, it's, as a candidate, you should know your value and what's going on. This is on you, right? You have to calibrate your own value, but you own yourself.
100%. Yeah. So coming to the end of the session here, just looping back to the start, I'm wondering, like, what are some things you tell your younger self as you embarked on your career in games that you wish you knew back then? If you had a chance to go back and talk to yourself before you started all this and give yourself some advice, what would you tell yourself?
Talk to girls less, program more. I wouldn't tell my younger self anything. Like, I don't know. I made the mistakes I made. Like, I wouldn't be where I wouldn't have learned from them if I didn't make them. Like, I don't,
Sure.
You're not. I think what Bernie's message throughout tonight was, what can you control? And if I could have been more mindful of that thought process along the way, I might have saved myself some gray hairs or something.
Yeah, mine's just be curious, stay curious, figure out what else you can learn, figure out what else you can learn about different ways of doing things, meet as many people as you can. But like Bernie said, I think life always works out, right? You always get to where you need to be. So.
Yeah.
The thing people told me, my dad told me this, was pick your fights better. Like, don't fight everything. And like, I don't know. It's like being in love. You can read a poem about being in love until you're there. You don't really know how to do it. So I could tell myself this. I just don't have, the skills to do it then. So what I could say to myself, like my younger self would not be able to act on.
True.
That's the, like, try not to have regrets, right? It's like, I don't, I was not capable of picking my fights better when I was 25 because I'm full of like testosterone and youth. right? I thought I could win every fight. I mean, that's why I became a lawyer, right? I thought I could win every fight, and I, that's the message. That's one of the things I learned, but I would not have been able to do it when I was 35. No way.
Go to the bar, walk your dog, keep a diary. These are the bits of advice that we've heard tonight.
That was pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there. Leave your
Yeah.
house. I read a book once that said you should always say yes to going to lunch.
Oh,
but
yes.
you know the owner, right? Just talk to different people.
Absolutely. I've said it's how I got, just said yes to almost everything, and you never know what's going to happen. Like it's tiring, but it works. So. Yeah, thanks to all three of you. This was a great conversation. I hope everybody watching took some notes and got some great advice out there, and are on your way to finding whatever type of job that is you're looking for. And best of luck to you. I know times are a little bit tough right now, but just stay persistent and polite and consistent, and things will work out for you. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you all later.
Thanks.
Oh, one thing I did forget to ask is, how can people keep in touch with you if they want to ask any questions or follow up or anything after this?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is good. I put my Twitter handle. I don't know if people still want to use Twitter, considering that's up to them.
It's debatable.
But, yeah.
Or walk your dog and I'll meet you at one of the breweries.
And LinkedIn me and follow my company page. We'll post helpful tips about getting hired.
Yeah, get your LinkedIn profiles up to date and follow these three great folks, and they'll have some great tips for you. So yeah, thanks again, everybody.
Four great folks.
Yeah, maybe follow Tim too.
I'm okay.
All right. Well, thank you for asking me to be here. Nice to be
Yeah,
with
thanks
you
for
guys.
joining.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Peace.
Bye.